Hey everyone, it's Marina from the jungle and hello from Bulla in regional Victoria. Sorry we haven't been online for a while. I am the continual, consistent spokesperson for the team and I have been travelling a great deal. We've also been really busy, I'll be honest. We're just, like probably lots of people, a little bit under-resourced and this is the type of stuff that falls off. But we're back with a workplace edit. And we're going to do a topic I think is super interesting and super relevant to many aspects of business at the moment, and that is ageism. Now, the format of the workplace edit always follows the same three-part process. One, I tell you a story, a real life story, and sometimes we move a few facts around to protect the privacy or to emphasise certain parts of a real life story. Do that, one, because everyone likes a bit of gossip, but to also validate you and maybe an experience that you're having in your own business or your own workplace, make you feel less crazy and less alone. Then we do an analysis of it, or the consequences I'm going to do in this one, and they give you some tips on how you might be able to fix it in the future. All right, ageism. This story goes back about 6-7 years ago, thereabouts. Many of you know that I teach business analysts and management consultants on how to be business analysts and management consultants, and I have done it for the best part of 20 years. And lots of changes have gone through it. So within that area, and I'm not tooting my own horn, people generally feel happy that they get to hire me and what have you, because I do a pretty good job, because it's something I feel really passionate about. I think good quality knowledge is so important in the world of business analysis and consulting, and it leads to better partnerships that lead to better businesses for everyone on that front. So lots of passion here, 20 years of knowledge, bit of a swag on it. Find myself with a group of business analysts who've all been sent by their client or their companies. They've all been sent along to, for whatever reason, to be able to learn how to be better business analysts and to be able to help shape and influence our own organisations. Well, there's no really nice way to say it, but this group of students were possibly the most annoying group of students I have ever dealt with in over 20 years, internal, external, anywhere in the world. Really annoying. And they're annoying because their interpersonal skills sucked. But one of the things that really got me is that they were, apart from being incredibly unlikable, you can tell from my body language, is they were so hard-headed that they were almost impossible to teach. Everything you said, they were like, I know. And they misunderstood that synthesising knowledge contextually is not the same as being able to do a search and retrieve on this puppy, as opposed to this puppy who obviously feels very strongly as well and has decided to join this little rant. Okay, his name's Choco too, by the way. Choco's going to stay with me as we do this little rant. All right, back to these group of folks. They were really hard-headed. They had no growth mindset, very inflexible, quite combative, I'd say, at a couple of points. Misunderstood, challenging and combative. It was just juvenile. I'm going to be honest, I'm just going to speak freely. Really juvenile, it was really annoying. But one of the things that disturbed me more than anything was how they fostered group discrimination, and one, didn't call each other out on it, and two, didn't see the danger that goes with discrimination on every level and how it sort of bleeds into everything from commercials to personal impact to social equity. It's everything. You have to be self-aware if you've got some discriminatory sort of attributes about yourself. Now in this, I'm just going to do a little quick sidebar. I have always found it mildly amusing how we discriminate based on horoscopes. People go, oh, yeah, but I'm a Scorpio, so I suck. Or, I don't know, I'm a Libran, I can't help it, I charm everyone, or whatever it is. These little labels then socialise us under these categories, and all of a sudden we find ourselves making the discriminatory, in this one horoscopes are pretty low impact, hopefully, but we sort of find ourselves navigating up to whatever that bias is. I'm an Aries as an example, and apparently, I don't know, where if you can hear a beep, it's that farm dog is sitting under the table now, chewing on a little squeaky toy. It's super cute. All right, but we get this sort of weird navigation to discriminatory profiles on it. Now keep that in mind, friends. Big problem with discrimination. When I tell you the rest of the story of what happened with these students. Anyway, they were super annoying, hardcore, arrogant, really rubbish interpersonal skills, just unlikable on it. Now, when I was starting to realise that this group were a bit hard, they were hard work, but absolutely they're hard work. But, you know, never one to back down from a challenge. I was sort of listening to them and how they were talking in their group, you know, projects and stuff, and I thought, I think these guides are ageist. I think that's probably one of the really big issues with it that's going on here. So, for those of you who know Lewin says, the social scientist, Lewin says, either add or take something away from a system to figure out how strong the system values it. So you can tell if you try to take something away and it goes berserk, you know the system valued it. Or try to stick something else in it, they'll repel it. So what I did in a little Lewin move to validate my assumption was to throw down quite a divisive, not wrong, but a divisive comment and just see how the crowd reacted. So I wanted to see the reaction, not really worry about the content. And the statement that I threw down in this teaching scenario was that people over 50, because of their age and their continuity in the business, are uniquely positioned to be superior in being able to understand the cadence, the patterns of business. And it's for that reason anyone over 50 should have a greater weighting in decision making. Well, these students, I was right. I'll just get to the end. I was right. They were ageist. They were like, no way. And then all their discriminatory beliefs, thoughts and concepts then spilled out. And essentially their discrimination around ageism was around they highly value technology. So they themselves value it. Me taking the idea that technology was only one unit within a broader business threatened them. And as a result, it gave more firepower to actually being more discriminatory against people who, wait for it, are over 50. I hope that made sense. It's a bit management consulting, but they just went berserk. They're like, no way! People over 50 don't understand technology. And I was like, that's ridiculous. This is ridiculous. So what I made them do, like naughty school kids, grab their phones, and we made them search when mobile phones were invented and the composition of uptake over mobile phones and why the Nokia 6110 was such a great phone. But anyway, these guys, they were having none of it. They did exactly what we see in social scientists where in strong bias models, they reject all the facts that actually threaten their worldview. So they're like, yeah. So I did a little bit, but I just want to finish off this little first part of this really quickly around the case study, shall we call it, was the impact it had on business design and innovation. It's really relevant to AI now as well. So what they did, the scenario we were going to design around was that there were a bunch of elderly people, when I say elderly, these people like 70, 75, in regional Australia, and they needed to get to a physio to improve their well-being, and the government were going to give them some incentives to do that. They needed to ring up and book, and then that was going to be it, type of thing. All right, that's roughly the scenario. For those of you who are trained business analysts or management consultants, you would hear in that scenario things like theory of constraint, time, delayed, there'd be waste, planned waste, there'd be slot theory going on, timing, scheduling, all the things that we use in re-engineering and all that stuff. So nice, juicy little case study. Anyway, so these cats, they are tasked with coming up with a solution that needs to get signed off by decision makers who are probably over 50. So bad. And make it appropriate to the personas and what have you. Like a bit of journey mapping, a bit of sentiment. We also want to see efficiency. We also want to see reduction on frictional elements in process design, etc. Bit of business analyst talk there. Anyway, so these guys come up with this solution, and I kid you not, it was speechless. I nearly hung up my teaching. I was like, oh mate, I'm a failure. This is ridiculous. So the solution they came up with was roughly send a letter out, send a letter, like a letter. Send a letter out, bit of paper, print, send it out, post it out to Joe. Joe's probably got a PO box. Now remember, the scenario is a physio solution. It's not discretionary, generally off the back of an injury, older people. Quite important, time sensitivity. By the way, all that stuff was just ignored by this group. So they sent a letter. They arranged, their solution was to send a letter out to Joe. Joe would read it, hopefully. Then Joe would ring up, because these analysts, I know, can we call them analysts? Believed that Joe wouldn't have a mobile phone, and Joe would have a landline with a curly cord, and he would have to ring up, and Joe would go, hello, I need to have a physio appointment. And they would schedule 3 weeks. Oh, it was just, terrible solution as an analyst community. And I was listening, they were doing like showing me how their design was, and I don't know. I was just watching it thinking, oh my God, I'm a failure as a teacher. I'm a failure. And I was still had in the back of my head how much discrimination had gone on in the conversations leading up to it. And at the end of it, they were like, ta-da! Like little, like primary school, they wanted a certificate for participation. And they asked me, what do you think of this solution? I went, it's not great. I think my whole body language was like, it's terrible. But my language was, it's not great. And this group were like, no, you can't say that. And I was like, let's unpack it. Let's see if we can turn this into a learning moment. Anyway, went through it, hard work, bad interpersonal skills, just disagreed with every point, every alternate view that may have challenged the idea that they were perfect. Sorry, I'm a bit mean. But at the core of this whole ridiculous design was a cemented in discrimination against people over 50. It was like this heavy lead magnet that sat in the design, because they didn't think people over 50, or in this case the 70-year-olds and the 75-year-olds, even had a mobile phone. They hadn't checked it. Their assumption they never tested, nor were they self-aware enough to realise that their assumption was built off discrimination. And they were going to put out this ridiculous life well-being influencing system based on a handful of hard-headed, I don't even know, these terrible analysts who just had this belief that old people were technophobes. Wrong. But it's a really good example of how discrimination left unchecked can actually have very, very big and serious consequences. On the commercial side of it, there would have been a whole lot of money wasted by rolling out this ridiculous system. And I actually think they did a part of it, which makes this even worse. But it was just, terrible on it. But it also shows you how whole groups of people can be sidelined because of a discriminatory element. Now, that's sort of like the case study, a little bit of the analysis, what was going on and what can you do about it. This issue is really serious around ageism, and it's broader than, it falls under obviously the umbrella of discrimination, but ageism is really, really serious. A huge amount of our workforce are over 50. But if we allow very strong voices to go unchecked and be unchallenged around their discriminatory behaviour, then what we're going to see is, and we're probably already beginning to see it, a whole part of our society and community being minimised, reduced in their impact, not being listened and not being heard, which can often then result in inferior services, inferior power and support. Look, he's all upset. He's like, I wouldn't let that happen. You know what, Choco? I think he would be more sensitive and smarter than some of those analysts I was talking about. I don't know. But it has really, really serious consequences. We've seen it with women, they get paid less because they're not valued as much. We see it with different ethnicities. It's rife, this discrimination problem. And AI now, who is learning from us in many ways, is learning that discrimination is somehow allowed. So here's my tip for you, friends. Get on it. Get on it. And I'm going to give you a 3-step process. 1, learn about your own discriminatory behaviours and thoughts. You don't have to share them with anyone. You don't have to maybe I've got a couple of mates who I'm quite open with secretly, and I would say, oh my God, this insert group drive me crazy on it. But then I also am feeling quite confident I know why they drive me crazy. And the why is the story of me. I don't like lazy people, right? So it's just something in me. It's just a pattern, a blueprint, strength or a weakness, doesn't matter, it's just a thing, right? But I have to be really careful my underlying value structure doesn't then explode into a whole discriminatory sort of focus or go, anyone I think that falls within that category, they're potentially lazy, that I start have a negative bias toward them. Not okay. Particularly because I still design. Second of all, here's another tip. If you're in a meeting and you're seeing flagrant discrimination going on, and we'll talk about ageism because it seems to be normalising, call it out. Whether you do it, I'm not a big fan of the whole public show, the whole fight and challenge stuff. But I am actually a fan of making sure that it is said. I'm not sure, if you say it diplomatically and you say things like, I'm not really sure that the assumption around that age is appropriate. I'm sure we're not here to segment people and their value to this based on age categories, or to even be gentle but sharp to point out that some of the underlying assumptions that are associated with ageism, like 50-year-olds don't understand tech, how damaging it is from a commercial point of view. Third one and last one, if all your little efforts to try to change the tide, move the tide around, and start pushing people back into a more neutral or sensible outlook, if they're not working, go to HR. Just go to HR, raise a concern, keep raising a concern until there is enough concerns about ageism that a campaign and an education and a remediation activity takes place. And you can reform it back to get back into the conversation, this is not okay. And that terrible consequence of bad design, bad behaviours, all that stuff can start to get reduced again. Bit of a long one today. I haven't been around, and I've got a dog here who's he's very, very concerned. I think he'd like a discussion here about, he'd be like, I think you should do one about dogs. What do you think? Should we do one about doggies? Yeah. All right, everyone. Hello and goodbye from Bulla in regional Australia. Thanks for listening, and we will see you again on another one of these little funny stories about the workplace edit. Bye.